Hello, everyone, and welcome to this COVID-Safe Plan Legal Compliance webinar. My name is Nihal Samara. I'm the General Counsel and Legal Director of the law firm Kaizen Synergy. Over the past few months now, our law firm has actually been running a number of open webinars to actually support community service agencies across Australia, and these have been incredibly well received and also popular. They are also all made available on our YouTube channel and continue to be a useful resource for many community service organisations. Today, we're going to be focusing specifically on agencies that are registered under the CATSI Act, being the Corporations for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander corporations. Specifically, we are going to focus on the COVIDSafe Plan and looking specifically on what works. And I'll give you an example of systems and processes that other CATSI registered agencies are currently using to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and make sure that services delivered are actually safe and effective. There is a lot of confusing information out there, and agencies are just looking for resources and tools to do some of the most basic stuff. And so today's session is really about, well, how can we provide support to agencies like yourselves, but more importantly, what is actually working at the moment, not something that is theoretical or used on paper or and the likes, but what is actually working? What are we actually seeing that is working and is being used by other agencies and is actually making a difference to communities? So this is the stuff that we're going to look at today. As always, during our webinars, we'd like to pay our respects to the elders past and present upon the lands on which we all meet. While this session is being run by webinar and recorded, we do pay our respects to the traditional owners from where you all join us from around the country this morning. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. Certainly this webinar is being recorded all the way up to the question and answer part of the session. We do open up the phone lines and computer lines, and more than happy to stay on the line and answer all of your questions before we finish up. You can also email us and call us after today's webinar as well too. You can also call me directly on my mobile as well too, which is also being made available. And that number is this number that we'll put into the chat group here and is also made available in today's materials. All of the materials that I am using will also be circulated around to all attendees as well. So it is about getting resources out to your agencies as well. When we do open up the phone lines, we do stop the recording to protect people's privacy. And also, if you don't like to talk during that time, you can also type your messages into the chat group as well too. So let's get started. So one of the things that we really wanted to look at with this COVIDSafe Plan is giving you the tools of, well, what are other agencies like yourselves doing now that is actually working well? And with it, just to recap some of these things that we are seeing is that the Commonwealth Government and state governments and territory governments have identified that First Nation peoples are actually at a greater risk. The coronavirus has infected already some 6,500 people. A number of people have unfortunately died out of this group. The elderly and those living with underlying conditions such as respiratory disease, asthma, diabetes, kidney disease are more common to actually have life-threatening consequences if they do get COVID-19. Unfortunately, what we are seeing across the country is that Indigenous and First Nation peoples are actually at greater risk. And other agencies that provide support, CATSI agencies and AMSs around the country, have sent us this information saying that people most at risk, being the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, are at greater risk of coronavirus, specifically if they're aged over 50 with chronic conditions, have a weakened immune system, and are aged 70 years or over. That being said, look, the details of why this is the case is listed here. I'm not going to go into it, but obviously yourselves are very familiar with this information, which is why so many people have joined us today. That said, there is so much information out there. The Prime Minister has outlined the three-step COVID-Safe Plan. There's roadmaps that are being tabled. Safe Work has listed also codes of conduct. There's the apps that people are talking about. There's a whole range of legislation, posters, you name it. There's so much information that is actually out there, but in fact, some of it is just so confusing that many people just don't know sort of where to start. So with it, essentially, we've broken it down into three parts for community service organisations, and this has really worked well. First of all, agencies obviously should have a plan, and I'll come to what that actually looks like. The other part to support the plan is that your agency needs to have policies, and I'll show you what those look like as well too. And as part of that, you also need to have pandemic forms. Now, I'll show you what those look like as well. Often people sort of put together a plan and then go, great, we have a plan, but what do we do now with it? And this is one of the major challenges. We will give you access to what we call the Jumba 360 dashboard, and this basically gives you all the tools that you need in one spot. You can have a look and see how it all fits together around it. But essentially, we've got agencies that are registered as CATSI agencies and other community service organisations. They have the tools, they have the pandemic plan in place. It literally is click button to actually utilise the resource that I'm about to show you as well. And as part of this, each of the plans that the Prime Minister has, or stages that the Prime Minister has covered, be that step 1, step 2, step 3, is then divided into what are the key things that your company needs to do. And this is the important part around this. If not managed properly, communities can be at risk, but equally can take a lot of time to try and work out what you actually should be doing as part of this process. One of the main reference documents that we will be using is, which many of you would have seen, is this three-step framework that the Commonwealth Government has issued, which basically says step 1, step 2, step 3. It gives you the details of what is required, but doesn't actually tell you the how to do and what you need to do and when. So while it gives you the three-step sort of goals, it doesn't tell you what you actually need to be doing. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. Just a couple of things that I wanted to inform you about. There is, and we've got a lot of directors and officers of companies joining us from around the country, and I welcome you to today's session. Also, we've got CEOs and managers that are in responsible positions. And it's great that you're all joining us today. As part of that, you in your roles have an obligation under law, under work health and safety legislation, to make sure that the services you deliver are safe to your community, but also that the sites that you operate are also safe for staff to work at. And that is something that is under work health and safety legislation, and it's a duty that many of you need to know and also make sure that this is why your COVIDSafe Plan is so important, because it is about the how do I make my services safe for my community to support our mob, but also what is the role that I play to make sure that our systems are correct so that our staff are kept safe to deliver services, but also are kept safe from not getting COVID-19 within our workplace as much as what is reasonably appropriate to do so. So it is important that you look at this, obviously, which is why there's so many people joining us today. But also, let's just acknowledge and say that COVID-19, the coronavirus, will be with us for some time. So it is important that your business has a plan and continues to plan to keep your workplace healthy, safe, and virus-free. So the COVIDSafe Plan is really meant to do four things, and I'll show you how we do this and monitor this for you as well, and show you what other agencies are doing to actually achieve these four things. Now, these four things of your COVIDSafe Plan is to firstly ensure that staff are kept safe. Secondly, ensure that community and services are supported and services delivered. It may need to change to support your business operations. And also, how do you access support to continue to deliver services as well? So these are some of the key things that other agencies have already implemented, and it's working well. Now, we've got a number of community health services and also well-being services that have joined us today, and also education services as well. So what we have done in designing the COVIDSafe Plan that you can use is to take a quality standards approach. And I know this is something new, but I'm just going to cover this briefly. So there are quality standards that your agency needs to know and follow as part of this. So what we have done is literally followed a quality standards process and said, right, let's have a look at what tools and give you the tools to identify areas for improvement. And by doing this, it means that we're following a plan that allows you to ensure that you've got your checks and balances in place. What this means, and this is my diagram that we've put together, is that when we start from left and just go right, and I'll show you and I wanted to just get this slide up so you can see how this is actually designed for you as well. What we have done is taken the laws across each state and territory and Commonwealth, looked at what that says. So we've got the compliance part of it ticked off. We've then also looked at what guidelines are out there. And some of these guidelines, there are a lot of stuff that's out there, but we've looked at the Commonwealth medical or health guidelines. We've looked at the safe work checklists and also looked at the pandemic plans for each state and territory. So where you're actually located, each state and territory has its pandemic plan. We've just put up as a picture here, the picture of Victoria. By taking this step by step approach means that we've then come up with a series of self-assessment tools for you to use. Those self-assessment tools can then be fed into the pandemic register, and the pandemic register will then say to you, okay, here are the areas that you need to improve. Now, because we've looked at the key laws, we've looked at the safe work guidelines and health guidelines, it means that you've got your basic information around your policies that you need, your legislation that you need, and that's how we've got you the COVIDSafe Plan up. Now, if one of these things change, like we're seeing in Victoria at the moment, where we are seeing that the guidelines are changing and increased lockdowns, just as an example, and we're seeing also outbreaks now in the last few days in New South Wales as well too, more recently, then this can change to flex back up. Or if you're based currently in Northern Territory and Queensland, then flex back down to as the step 1, step 2, step 3 process is followed. So you can see that we've got that in place for you as well. And you can see that on the dashboard that I'm about to open up for you, you can see that you've got the compliance ticked off, you can do your checklist, and you can identify your areas for improvement as well, which makes it just simple to do. Now, there are a whole list of things that you need to look at in terms of what the Commonwealth Government have asked all agencies to do. There are about let me have a look, 14 different items. And each one of these items, we've actually then put into the COVIDSafe Plan for you to then utilize and look at as well too. So you can see how this in fact works. And there's a whole range of items like keeping the social distancing and of 4 square meters and 1.5 meters distancing per person, and also discouraging things like carpooling, but also looking at stay-at-home registers and also working from home where you can, and the likes of how do you actually do that. So with it, there are parts of this that as you look at it, there's not only rules that you need to follow, but there's also stuff that staff need to do as well. Now, there's with all these checklists that I've had, the main ones that we've looked at is to have a daily assessment COVID-19 form. And as part of that, some agencies that are using this have got staff to literally almost screen themselves voluntarily each day. It sounds like a big task to do, but it's actually something that can be easily done. There's a Aboriginal community controlled organisation that actually uses this. They have some 200 plus staff, and literally over the last few months, their staff each day log in and actually complete a daily assessment form. What that allows is a screening to make sure that their staff are safe, whether they're at home or whether they're actually coming into work. The first thing that they do is actually conduct a daily assessment form. And I'll show you what that actually looks like. We've then got the working from home checklist. We've got the workstation audit checklist to make sure that things are wiped down each day. And that meets your WorkSafe guidelines that you need to make sure that your agency is safe and your site audits are done. By staff supporting this feeds into your COVIDSafe plan. And this is something, I'm not saying that is a diagram, a pretty diagram that you should be looking at. This is something that actually works with other AMSs and other CATSI registered organizations as well too. And we've seen it work incredibly well for other agencies just like yourselves. So with that, let's actually just jump in and have a look at this tool around this. So effectively, to get into there, and you can log in and have a look. Quite simply, you can go to, if you go to google.com, obviously, and you type in Jumba360.com. Here we are here, Jumba360.com. And what comes up is a big blue circle. Now you can go in, and the username that we're using is 12345 and password is 12345. It's a tool that you can log in and utilize, and click on here. This is the demo site for this tool that you can see. Here we go. Google doesn't like the easy password, but it's a demo site for us to use. Okay, so here we are. So with a couple of things on here that you can see, we've got all our pandemic forms listed on the left-hand side of the screen here. Here we are here, the daily assessment form, the pandemic assistance form, which I'll show you, and the working from home and the workstation assessment form. We've also got the disaster, COVID-19 disaster button in the middle and the HR area. So let's have a look firstly at the disaster plan and the COVID system. Now, if I click on that, what effectively comes up is my COVIDSafe Plan projects. And if I click on the projects, here it is here. I've got my step 1, step 2, and step 3. You'll see that we've also added in 2 other sections saying the Job Maker Industrial Relations and also Job Maker Skills Program. Now we've included this because the Prime Minister made some recent announcements to industrial relations and mentioned that over the course of the next few months that this will be something to be looked at, and incentives that your agencies may be able to access. So we've actually put this in, so when you register, you'll be able to get these alerts. If I click on Open, I can see each of my activities that I need to do. And these are all broken down into step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and I've got individual items that I can actually access. And each of these are broken into step 1, step 2, and step 3. So if I go into step 2, I can see that we've got those details that are listed as they open up as well. So under my disaster plan, I've got the tool that allows me to access this, and equally, I can look at my COVID-safe planning part. The COVID-19 assessment form obviously is something that you want to be able to use to screen your staff. And we've got people and agencies on here, that some AMSs that have some 200 plus staff, and other agencies that are literally this have 2 people working in there. So we open this up to another agency, which we're very proud to say, Wild Projects, based up in Queensland, that have a small group of a team working with them, and they returned from country on Monday, just a couple of days ago, and opened this up and have started to use this as well. We've got another agency that has 200 plus staff that access it, running multiple services, and all of those staff literally log in every day. Now, what they do is they click on add a new entry. They go through and answer questions like, for example, have you gone on to any hotspot areas? Do you display any symptoms that you might have? And they go through and answer these questions each day before they start. Once that happens, and I'll just mark this in here, then effectively you can see, and I've just created a demo user called Fred Flintstone, which allows me to see exactly where we're up to with this. If I was to answer yes to one of these or one or more of these questions, then automatically my manager gets an alert to say, hey, there's a possible person with COVID-19 symptoms. Agencies have used this because you can access it via mobile device as well too. And it sends out the alerts telling people, hey, we've got these tools in place for you to see. What they've also got around this, so that screens out anyone with or staff with potential symptoms. What we've also got on this is the pandemic assistance form. Now, many of your agencies may also provide things like food packs to the community. What this allows is for people to register for food packs. And other agencies, AMSs, as I've mentioned, are using this at the moment for things like if they need to support elders, where elders can't get out of their homes because they might have 1 or 2 cases in the local community or nearby. And so with it, staff can actually complete this form. You know, is this person calling in an elder? What members, what address do they live at? Do they have any dependents as well too? What are they after in terms of services? And it could be food pack information. And they've put in, you know, things like toilet paper and the likes because of the shortages and things that people are buying. And effectively, they can fill this out. And what this does is effectively tells them what do they want in terms of their food pack if your agency is actually doing that. And what this does is then automatically, and I'll just link this back to here, what this then does is creates the register and feeds this information back to your pandemic module, so you can actually condense and identify the warehousing that you need for this. The other parts that you might look at is people working from home. And of course, there's obviously another form that people have used and sometimes people have used a Word document or Excel document and just don't know where to go to actually register that people have been working from home. Well, now you can actually have your register to say, okay, here's my working from home checklist that people or my staff have also got as well. You can also set the task list. And again, this is what other agencies are currently using to help staff manage their tasks as well too. And by doing this, you can actually then manage your staffing requirements as well. And again, alerts are being sent through. And equally, what WorkSafe have also looked at is around the Workstation assessment form. And this is the important one. So with the Workstation assessment form, you can actually go through and check to make sure that your WorkSafe and workplace is done and safe. It means that you can then adjust things like the chairs and the mouse and wipe down off equipment. All of these things that WorkSafe expect you to do is then listed here. And this depends on the frequency of the services that are being run from each of your different sites as well. And again, the important part is you've got the register. So you know what's actually being done and when. Equally, as part of this, one of the other things that agencies have looked at was around managing their staff. And some of this was, well, how do we, people are working from home and they're in and out of the offices, can we effectively have, how do we get in contact with people? Well, effectively, what we've got here, which links to the COVID-19 Safe Plan, is the HR screening tool. And this allows staff, when they log in, to do a bunch of things on here. Firstly, they can update their details with their personal and emergency details, so you know where people are. So if I wanted to say, right, in this case, Fred Flintstone is here and his emergency contact details is myself, and I'm just going to say friend, and here is the details that are then listed here, and we can put in, as I said, even my mobile number, which people have, and here it is here. So it means then that if people are working all over the place and HR information, you're trying to get in contact with people, well, you can do it directly from this dashboard now, real easily. People can update their emergency contact details. If they wanted to, they can also lodge their timesheets and information here. So it makes your life a lot easier when looking at your COVID safe planning process. And keeping in mind that it then sends alerts back to you around this. And if you needed to update your COVID safe plan, then all your key requirements that you need to do as of today is effectively available, all in one spot, ready to go. So with it, you can add your own details in as well too, but keep in mind that to simply have your COVID safe plan up, you can simply log in, click on this button for the disaster and go to the relevant COVID safe plan. Agencies have used this if they needed to ramp down, and it's effectively your key requirements that you need to look at as well too. And it's really as that simple to actually run. So when you go back to have a look at your specific COVID safe planning requirements, when we look at what is actually required, and this is something that the Commonwealth has said that all agencies need to be looking at, then in one spot, you can then run your staffing requirements, you can meet your safe work areas, and you can then run your COVID safe plan. Now, importantly, one of the things that from their agencies have been able to do is say, right, I need to know where we're at right now at this point. How can I run a report that tells me, can I assess where my agency is at right now? And that's a question that you should all be asking now. If you're serving your community and as part of your COVID plan, where are we at to right now? And with this, what you're able to do, because people are feeding this in, is simply go to print. And what it does is then generates your status report of your COVID safe plan. And it's that simple to actually do. And you should be able to, especially if you're in this position at the moment, providing community services, and you want to know where things are right now, and you need to make a decision on how best you're going to support your community and your mob, then you need to be able to pull this information very, very quickly. So we have done it real easy and made things real easy for agencies. This is something that agencies like yourselves are using right now. So it's not something that we're saying, oh, look, try this out and see how you go. It is something that whether you're a small agency of running 2 people right up to an agency of 200 or 300 plus staff, then again, this is a system that is actually making a difference on the ground to local communities across the country. So with it, part of the recommendations we are saying is have a look at this plan, have a look at the policies that are located within it as well too, and you have your pandemic forms also available as well too. We will open up the phone lines and stay on the line to answer any questions that people might have. with that, if you do have any questions after today's session, by all means, please contact us on either 1300 360 360 or email us at support@jumba360.com.